Oh, okay.
I got you. Welcome, everybody. This is Cleat Dreams, a women of fantasy football show. And yes, I'm well aware that I am not a woman, but that's okay because producer Josh here is filling in for Renee. But the friendly face that everybody knows and loves, that would be Miss Kelly in Phoenix joining the party. And we're going to talk a little bit about what happened in week 9 and how it can translate into week 10 of the NFL season. So stick around. It's always fun with the producer Josh moniker because I'm always in the background and nobody ever sees me. So. But welcome to Cleat Dreams, a women of fantasy football show here with Club Fantasy FFL and, of course, women of fantasy football. The star of today's show, Miss Kelly in Phoenix. How are we doing today, Kelly?
I'm great. Thanks, Josh. I'm coming off of my birthday weekend, a Cardinals third win in a row. So, it's good.
Things
it's
happening.
fine.
Good things in Kelly's world. We'd like to see it. We'd love to see it.
It's very
All
good.
right.
And I know, you're filling in. You're not usually part of the show. So we were talking about who's going to do what here. So I'm going to take some of the heat off and I'm just going to ask you to play Renee and give us the top 5 from each role last week. And we start with quarterbacks. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I think I can do that. Before we do that, though, Kelly, I want to give props to our lovely affiliate here, which I know that you know very well. And that would be TrophySmack. So if you're watching this show, head over to our unique affiliate link, TrophySmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF, and get all of your achievement-based needs. But more importantly, show that you too are a champion of women of fantasy football and get yourself a fancy little championship belt. This would be the nice rose gold plated with the nice white leather bound belt, all customizable, and you can get it at TrophySmack.com/WOFF, WOFF. All your achievement-based needs, belts, trophies, rings, wall smack, you name it, they got it. All those commissions we're planning to give to the women that we send to events like the Super Bowl, the Combine, the NFL Draft, all that to help women in sports. That's what we were all about. So TrophySmack.com/WOFF, WOFF. All right, Kelly, now that we paid a little bills, let's get into the quarterbacks.
You know what? It is really important that people do visit that TrophySmack.com/WOFF because it allows us to see how much traffic is coming in from the community and it helps to support even bigger initiatives. So I hope people do take a minute to do that. So thank you.
Of course. Always showing love to the ladies around these parts. So, all right, let us start with the top 5 quarterbacks from last week. Of course, Mr. Joe Burrow throwing bombs and completely avoiding Jamar Chase, 30.1 fantasy points. Jalen Hurts had himself a great week. Love that as an Eagles fan, 29.9 fantasy points. Geno Smith, the shootout with the Rams, 25.1, 363, 3 touchdowns, also 3 interceptions. The crazy one on this list when you're looking at everybody else, Mr. Daniel Jones, for the first time in over 600 days, throws a touchdown pass at MetLife Stadium. And not only that, did it twice. What do you know? Crazy things happening with the Giants. And, of course, Mr. Lamar Jackson, 23.6 to round out the top 5. Kelly, which of these quarterbacks, outside of maybe Geno Smith since he's on a bye, do we think can have similar impacts heading into week 10?
Wildly enough, I like Daniel Jones this next week. The Panthers happen to be the worst defense in the league. That is no secret. But Daniel Jones, he's been on a bit of a tear. As you mentioned last week, he had some yards, he had some points. But I wanted to point out, I've got my handy dandy cheat sheet, that Daniel Jones is one of 3 NFC quarterbacks, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, with 2 or more touchdown passes, 0 interceptions in 4 games. I know we're on week 10, but if we're looking at a series of just 4 games, no interceptions, 2 or more touchdowns, that's pretty good company. And we know that Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield have been out there slinging bombs, or however we want to say that. So I really like Daniel Jones this week. 20 of 26 attempts in this last week. So now I'm trying to imagine him against the Panthers.
I was going to say, it's definitely a good matchup. In the plus side for Daniel Jones, he's not playing at MetLife, where typically he struggles, outside of maybe last week against the Commanders.
Very true. And this is kind of another weird little stat, but this could be his 3rd game in a row versus Carolina, which is kind of a weird stat, but he's had a touchdown pass and 0 interceptions. So I think we can anticipate a touchdown pass from Daniel Jones this week. And a fun prop bet could be no interceptions.
Okay. That's an interesting one.
I
mean, Carolina's not really creating turnovers, so I can see it.
They're not really creating turnovers, and just the fact that he's been difficult to intercept this season makes him kind of a standout. I kind of like it.
Okay. That's an interesting prop bet. I can get on board with it. Those Germany games, especially, I mean, really any of the games across the pond tend to be very tricky, and they don't always sort of play to some of the norms. Especially when you're, playing playing football on soccer fields, and a lot of the turf and things of that tend to be a little different on the players. But you know what? I'm on board with it.
If we want to call out another quarterback, Josh, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, by all means. This is your show.
Well, Lamar Jackson. I mean, we have to talk about Lamar Jackson. He's out here making history right now. This is 7 straight games where he's had 100+ passer rating. It's the longest active streak in NFL history. He has had 280 or more passing yards in 5 straight games. This is also the longest streak in NFL history. And he's the 5th QB of all time with 20 or more touchdown passes, 2 or fewer interceptions in the first 9 games of the season. Lamar
We might
Jackson.
be looking at another Lamar Jackson MVP season.
Oh,
He's
I just
it up right now.
I can't believe it. Like, the other one is, this was his 4th career game with 158.3 passer rating, which is the most in NFL history. So 3
For everybody that said he can't throw the football is like, they're swallowing those words.
It's so crazy. These are all passing historic streaks. So we got.
I still think the craziest stat from this game with Lamar was that he only had 4 rushing yards. He did it all through the air this week. Or in week 9.
He did.
And the Bengals Ravens game Thursday, the highest over under on the slate. So expect some more fireworks.
Definitely, for sure.
A lot of fun.
I wanted to throw out there, if anybody has any start sits, just drop them in the chat and we can pick them up as they happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Answer those in between segments. Love it. All right, let's go to
wide receivers.
All right. Top 5 wide receivers from last week. Mr. Jackson Smith and Jigba taking the reins from a hurt and inactive DK Metcalf, put up 37 fantasy points. Garrett Wilson, 9 for 90 and 2 touchdowns, 30 fantasy points, was the wide receiver 2 on the week. Some nifty touchdown catches with those 2, let me tell you. Zay Flowers, great game from him. 2 touchdowns on 5 catches, 29.7 fantasy points, And then, of course, DeAndre Hopkins making his mark felt in Kansas City, 28.6 points on Monday night. And a name that I would not have guessed when they said Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are back and 100% healthy. Demarcus Robinson catches 2 touchdowns, 27.4 fantasy points, all because Puka Nacua couldn't keep his hands to himself and started throwing bows.
Demarcus Robinson has been an interesting watch for sure. But how about that DeAndre Hopkins for real? He really just needed that. I think he needed to go to a team where he was going to get the ball. Something that bothered me in the broadcast though was he finally has a real quarterback or something like that. And I was like, hold the phone. DeAndre Hopkins had himself a career with the Cardinals, like a whole ass career.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't just suddenly be like, oh, well, now he's with a real quarterback. That was a little weird, but
Yeah, I mean, I know one of those seasons, Kyler got hurt. So, there's obviously that aspect of it, if I'm not mistaken,
true.
because I believe they had him that year before trading him to Tennessee. But I think more so they're referring to his time in Houston with Matt Schaub or Brock Osweiler and all the, terrible quarter. And I think Matt Schaub actually was with Andre Johnson. So I digress. But of course, not having much of anything in Tennessee either. So,
Right.
but I mean, it's like very few quarterbacks are Patrick Mahomes. So I think that probably is more so where that narrative comes from. But I agree. Kyler's always been a good quarterback. It's just, staying healthy and the offense there is, Cliff Kingsbury wasn't the best. So
It just came out really weird. I thought that was
I agree.
pretty odd. But believe it or not, this is not a horribly difficult stat to swallow. He set season highs with 8 catches and 86 receiving yards, along with 2 receiving touchdowns last week. I don't think anybody would have doubted he set season highs, but to also get 2 receiving touchdowns is pretty great. This makes it him the fourth most touchdowns among active players, apparently. 2 receiving touchdowns in his 14th career game. He makes him the 4th most among active players. He's got 120 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown in 2 of his past 3 games against Denver. Another one of those weird stats again. Like, let me think back to the last time DeAndre Hopkins faced off against Denver. But apparently he plays very well against Denver. So if we want to look at another, I know we like to talk about touchdown props on this show. I like DeAndre Hopkins for a touchdown this week.
I was going to say, we talked about it a little bit on No Pun Intended earlier. DeAndre Hopkins potentially getting that Patrick Surtain treatment. You think that plays into maybe he doesn't hit that touchdown prop?
No.
Okay. Oh, Kelly's like, fuck it, I'm in. Let's go.
I just feel like he is going to become that safety blanket, just like we were seeing with Rashee Rice. And I mean, Hopkins can catch anything. Anything you throw at him, he's going to catch. He's a Pickens. He's what I hate to say this, what Mark Andrews used to do. Catching something that was just going to be completely errant, but somehow ends up in his hands. And Mahomes is notorious for throwing off balance, for throwing behind a player, for all of those things because of the way he scrambles. And that's going to be no problem for Hopkins.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Ready to talk about some running backs?
Let's talk about some running backs.
All right. The best running back of week 9 also had arguably the play not only of the year, but maybe the century with his backwards hurdle. And yes, I'm talking about my guy, Saquon Barkley, 32.9 fantasy points coming in as the RB1 on the week. Devon Achane, 32.1 fantasy points. I have never seen a running back so reliant on a quarterback for fantasy success. It's absolutely wild. Alvin Kamara, without both of his backup running backs, absolutely balled, 27.5 fantasy points. Chase Brown, first time without a backup with Zach Moss there. 100% of the running back share, 26.7 fantasy points, checking in as the RB4. And of course, to round out the top 5, much like with every other position we've talked about, it's got to be a Baltimore Raven. That would be Derrick Henry, 26.3 fantasy points. All right, Kelly, give me some stats. What are we looking at here from this group of 5?
Before I get into the stats, I cannot let the Saquon Barkley happening go by without talking about it, because not only did he break ankles here, but he broke ankles there, and then he jumped over somebody. I watched it like 25 times.
I love the video where they start like they caught it from like looking over the Eagles bench, and the moment you see him jump, you just see all the Eagles players and staff are just like, oh my god, like even Jordan Davis just kind of did one of these like, just like turning around like, oh my god.
It was one of the only person I think that I've ever seen do something similar could have been Lamar Jackson, to be honest.
Well, the spin move even before that backwards hurdle.
Yeah, it was like
too. Yeah.
All crazy.
Crazy. It's crazy. You know, if you saw that in Madden, people would have been like, there's no way that could happen in real life. Well, now it can. Madden, step your game up.
So crazy. Wild. I'm gonna talk about Alvin Kamara right now. You mentioned he still was able to play without his quarterback, without his backup quarterback. He still managed to have himself a freaking game. And he did, because right now, Alvin Kamara is in his 8th straight 1,000-yard season since entering the NFL in 2017.
That's crazy.
I can't believe it. This is his 8th straight season where he's had over.
That's 1,000 total yards, correct? That's
correct.
Rushing and receiving, correct? Because I don't think he's ever actually had 1,000 yards rushing in a season.
Well, this says his 8th straight 1,000. Actually, this could be scrimmage yards. Now that I'm looking at it, but it says it's his 8th straight 1,000-yard season is what our NFL communications sheet tells us.
Yeah, that's still really impressive.
He has surpassed Hall of Famer Marshall Faulk for the most catches by a running back in his first 8 seasons of all time. He can become the first running back, with 5 or more catches in 7 straight games since 2019's Christian McCaffrey. So he needs to have another game. This would be his 7th game in a row with 5 or more catches. I'm pretty sure he's going to do that again because they need him.
I was going to say, Chris Olave being out.
Yeah. Necessity. And apparently, here's that weird stat again, against Atlanta, he performs well. 100 or more scrimmage yards against Atlanta for sure. But yeah, he only needs 33 receiving yards to become the 5th running back ever in to achieve 400 receiving yards in 8 career seasons. So many weird little stats here about Alvin Kamara and history and fun things that you gotta run with it. Run with him. And I would definitely be doing a prop bet on either scrimmage yards or straight up receiving some sort of 5 or more receptions on Alvin Kamara this week.
I like that. As I mentioned, Chris Olave likely out this week. He suffered 2 concussions over the last 3 weeks. I honestly would be very surprised if we see him even in the next month. They're down Rashid Shaheed. They're down Bub Means. They're on like their wide receiver 4 as their wide receiver 1 right now. Taysom Hill even clocked receptions this past week, and he hasn't done that in weeks, even though he's classified as a tight end in most fantasy platforms. So Alvin Kamara basically is this Saints offense right now. So I think that's an easy over, in my opinion.
Definitely.
Any other running backs you want to talk out?
I don't think so, but I was just going to call out what I love this season that's been very exciting, especially when you think about prop bets, is how running backs have been more widely used in receiving situations. I think the Ravens really kicked off that trend with Justice Hill in week 1, I think it was. And you're like, wait, what? Now we're just seeing it a lot as we enter in week 10. It's as if all the teams got together and we're like, we're going to do that too.
Yeah,
So,
I like it. I like it.
Tight ends,
All right.
Josh.
Let's talk some tight ends. This would be. I feel like we end on this because it is your favorite position, right? We got to save the best for last. Is that it?
No.
I'm upset because none of your boys are on this list this week, and it's just.
I know.
It's been a tough season for Mark Andrews, and it
really
it hurts my soul, you know.
It hurts my soul too.
Anyway, let's talk about the tight end one on the week. Mike Gesicki scoring himself 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase fantasy managers are not happy about that, but you know what? Is what it is. Travis Kelce back from the dead, 22 fantasy points. Cade Otton has been the surprise of this NFL season, 21.7 fantasy points, as basically the top dog really in the Tampa offense now without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans coming back from the injury. Josh Oliver.
Yeah.
Pretty sure he was a former Ravens tight end at one point, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So there's some love here. All right. 16.8. Stealing points from TJ Hawkinson, man. It's disappointing. I don't like it. Hi, Kim. Hi. And the aforementioned Taysom Hill clocks in as the top 5 tight end on the week with 16 fantasy points. All right, Kelly, talk to me. Fun stats
it
from
really
this
wasn't that much of an exciting week for me when we talk about tight ends. I don't know if it was that exciting for anybody, to be honest, unless you're a huge Travis Kelce fan, or you happen to be playing Cade Otton that week. I think what we thought might happen just didn't materialize. It was kind of a blah week for tight ends, but Josh Oliver, as you mentioned, I happen to have a few notes about him. He could be hitting his 3rd game in a row with a touchdown. So 2 weeks in a row, he's had a touchdown.
Okay.
He's playing the Jaguars, who stink. So why don't we throw Josh Oliver in there in the mix for a touchdown? This could be his 3rd week in a row with a touchdown. He had a career high of 5 catches in week 9. So are they relying on Josh Oliver? Could be. A little streak in
could
there.
be them slowly working TJ Hawkinson back into the fold, coming back off IR with the knee injury and everything. Maybe all I'm seeing is this is a great prelude to the fantasy playoffs when TJ Hawkinson's ready to rock and roll, because they're clearly using the tight end position in Minnesota.
And here's the other one. I mean, I don't love talking about Travis Kelce. I just don't really like him as a person. Don't hate me. I just don't really like him.
You're not a Swiftie at heart. Come on,
I mean,
Kelly.
I will say that he was super nice to me at Super Bowl week. He answered my question. He made very direct eye contact, which I did like. But maybe it's his mustache. It just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know. But
it's a little creepy, not gonna lie.
It is. So let's just say this, though. Last week was his career high. It was a career high kind of week for a lot of people.
There you go.
14 catches, a season high of 100 yards. Now, here's where it gets good. This could be his 3rd game in a row with 10 or more catches and 90 receiving yards. This could be his 10th game in a row versus a division rival with 5 or more catches. So we know that Kelce's probably going to be good for 5 or more catches, but he's been on a freaking roll for 2 weeks now with 10 or more catches. So between him and DeAndre Hopkins, I don't know. Do we got to throw Kareem Hunt in the mix too? He's been a little touchdown machine, I guess. He's had a touchdown in 3 of his past, 5th game in a row, the rushing touchdown. Kareem
he
Hunt.
still did in overtime for them.
I didn't even talk about him in our tight end spot there. But Travis Kelce, looks like, as you mentioned, back from the dead. This could be his third game in a row with 10 or more catches, so we can't really overlook that. But there's something in the air when you talk about Bengals and Ravens. Will we see a good week from Mark Andrews? I cannot tell you that because I'm not a fortune teller and I have zero data to help me even make an intelligent decision. So go with your gut.
I was going to say, as a huge Deontay Johnson fan, when I saw that he got traded to the Ravens, I was like, man, this is great for real life NFL, but I don't think that there's two target earners in this offense because they're not even throwing to Mark Andrews right now.
Nope.
And it's like, if they're not throwing his way, why would they all of a sudden start throwing it Deontay Johnson's way? Truthfully, I think it's just going to open things up even more for Zay Flowers and Derrick Henry. Like those two and Lamar Jackson, they are the Ravens offense right now.
It's very true. A tight end as we wrap this up, but a tight end who did not make the top 5 this week was Trey McBride. You mentioned none of my guys made the list, but Trey McBride is right now ranking 3rd among tight ends, and they're playing the Jets. I can promise you we'll see Trey McBride showing up in this game. So I don't know. Do that what you will. He's had 50 or more receiving yards in 4 of the last 5 games. And he has had 5 or more receptions in, I think, every game, if I'm reading this right. So, Trey McBride.
I don't want to add insult to injury, but I'm pretty sure that Trey McBride leads the NFL in receiving yards without scoring a touchdown.
But he did have his first rushing touchdown last week.
Was it last week or a couple weeks ago? Because I know he recovered a fumble earlier in the season in the end zone. I do remember that.
Last week he rushed a touchdown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Week 9.
Well, we know
the Cardinals are on bye week 11, so get your Cardinals points in this week while you can, because then we got to bye.
Let's go. Let's go.
Thank you so much for sitting in with me this week. I know friends and fams that are tuned in, it was not our usual flow, but I had so much fun having Josh popping in. It adds like flavor.
I try. I try. Look, I'm not Renee. I'm not going to pretend to be Renee. I don't have near the thick Spanish accent that she does, but Renee does great work, and you guys are a great pair, and I love that we can do this show with you guys, and I love it. I love it, and I'm happy to fill in, especially since I couldn't record our DFS show tonight. We got to do it tomorrow morning, so loud for me to hop on to help out. So it worked out perfectly. So with that, any parting words, Kelly, before I close this out?
Make sure that you're following along on the app formerly known as Twitter. We'll be sure to put out, I'm sure we'll do a touchdown prop bet because that's one of our favorite things to do. So just keep your eyes peeled, whether you're following Renee or me or the Women of Fantasy Football accounts. Keep your eyes peeled for that graphic sometime in the next couple of days. And Kim, she still loves me, even though the Cardinals beat the Dolphins. Thank you, Kim. I love you too. And I am so happy and feel so blessed that the Dolphins sacrificed themselves so the Cardinals can be in first place. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. All right. As Kelly said, make sure you're following Women of Fantasy Football. That's at women_of_FF on, I will never call it X, but Twitter and Instagram. You can follow the URL, womenoffantasyfootball.com. Of course, if you're watching this on Club Fantasy, at Club Fantasy FFL, the URL clubfantasyffl.com. Follow Kelly at Kelly in Phoenix. Follow Renee at Renee Freak NFL. And if you really want to follow me, by all means, go for it at the One Hudsonian. But let's face it, Club Fantasy, Women of Fantasy Football, those are the important ones. So with that, I bid you all adieu. Thank you so much. Hi, Wendy. I'll see you tomorrow night. Oh, you know what? And that actually, great segue. I want to remind everybody, if you're watching this, be sure to tune in to tomorrow night's episode of the Sneaky Flex. So if you're unfamiliar with the Sneaky Flex, it is the greatest 15 minutes that you will have on the internet. Rowan and Macy, a couple of 9-year-old twin girls, have absolutely been crushing their picks this season. Wendy has done a phenomenal job hosting that show, taking over for you, Kelly. And more importantly, we have a special guest joining us on this show. It is former NFL running back Rashad Jennings is going to be joining the girls, and they're going to get to fire some questions at him, and we're going to talk fantasy and kind of talk about, Rashad Jennings' foray into the world of fantasy football after playing in the NFL for so many years. So make sure you subscribe to the Women of Fantasy Football channel, Club Fantasy FFL channel, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. That's where it's going to be at. So make sure you're doing that. And of course, show love and support to Women of Fantasy Football by shopping at TrophySmack, TrophySmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. All right. That's all I got. We're out of here. Kelly, thank you so much for letting me crash the party and host this thing for you. Kelly and Renee will be back next week at a new time because we're going to be swapping spots a little bit since the time change kind of messed things up a little bit. So be sure to join them at 8 p.m. Eastern leading into 9 o'clock's No Punt Intended. So peace out all. Love you.
Cleat Dreams.